Welcome back to
Session.
Hello. My name is Koby, and we were just talking off air about how I'm going to introduce this, and in the 10 seconds it's been, I haven't come up with anything. So, I'm here today with a very special someone. Would you like to introduce yourself? For the record.
Yeah, of course. I feel like I kind of have to. No, I'm kidding.
A little bit.
Yeah. I'm Alec. I'm Kobe's friend. We have been friends for damn near a decade, I feel like,
Very
at this
long.
point. And we came here to talk about me being queer, because that's one of the most prominent things about my personality.
It's true. It's true. Him and his Fruit Loop shirt that he's wearing.
So, I'm like, I didn't even plan.
This sort of came about because over time you and I would get into these really long conversations about your queerness and
Oh my
about
God,
your
yeah.
experience being queer. Just in general, because it's such a fascinating topic, and it's not something that's been well treaded because we're only just getting to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell this is a different sort of podcast from what I usually do because I'm doing the NPR voice where it's really low and not animated. So
I'm like, I took a whole bunch of antihistamines, so my voice would be really deep for this.
it's just gonna be you and I trying to like one up each other.
Hey,
So
I'm Alec.
You've introduced yourself. There is a very special occasion coming up that prompted us to finally get into the chair and do this. Would you like to reveal to the class what that is?
Top surgery.
Alec is getting top surgery after 2.5 years.
2.5 years, or about 2 years of waiting. You got me on a special day too, because I just got out of therapy, so I'm feeling so vulnerable.
We are. So
4 days away.
4 days away. You're turning 24 in 2 days.
Yes, and I started the process when I was 21.
Yeah, that's
Fucking crazy.
that actually. So this is basically just going to be like a profile, more or less. So I was writing down some stuff that I wanted to use as an outline, and so the first couple questions that I thought of, just going right off of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
You've been anticipating top surgery for years now, as you say. I mean, you could argue that it's been something on your mind for longer than the 2 years that it's taken, right?
Definitely.
So, has the knowledge that you're getting that gender-affirming procedure, like, has that shaped your personal development over the past 2 years? Do you think it would have been different if you weren't actively pursuing surgery?
I love that, because that's actually, like, honestly one of the things that I was talking about in therapy today, because it was like, I have felt just like so much more confident over the time period of even just like scheduling it. So like, when I first started my transition, I was never like sure of like if I wanted to go on T. Top surgery was pretty much like the thing that I was like most certain about, but I was like kind of iffy about it, and so I decided to take a leap of faith, and I went on T, and I actually had like a really good time with it. And I remember I felt so much more at ease and so much just like angsty and like angry after I had started it, and that was something that I wasn't even sure of.
Right.
So it's like, now that I have the top surgery date, the one thing I was sure of, it's like, it's been kind of like ebb and flow of like anxiety.
Right.
And but overall, I would say I am the most confident I ever have been, because I was thinking about it the other day, and you can attest to this, but I never used to be able to talk about my chest when I was younger.
Right.
Never even came up in conversation. And now, since I've had top surgery scheduled, how often do I talk about my boobs?
It's frequent.
Frequent,
We,
yeah.
we make
so
we
frequent.
make jokes about it all the time.
I
Actually.
know, literally.
Yeah. So you're saying that the knowledge that at the end of these 2 years you've been waiting, now at the end of how many days away is it? 5 days? 4 days?
Yeah, it's about 5 days. I have like a silly little thing going on Instagram, like the countdown.
Yeah.
But it stops at midnight.
Yeah.
So it's essentially 5 days away.
Right. So you're getting it on the 16th. Is it
Yeah.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
So next Tuesday. So it feels like you're saying all of this time spent becoming who you are in your 20s now, right? The young man that you are.
Yes.
It has really helped your confidence to have that as like this is the day that
Yes.
something huge is changing,
Oh
right?
my God. I said today in therapy, like this literal sentence, and I said, I wish every queer person the liberation that I have felt in the past 6 months. Like, it is so hard to vocalize, but to put, like, we pretty much came up with the the way to describe it is like when you look at a world in 2D, and then suddenly you start looking at like all the little details, and it becomes 3D. There's just so much more to it. It's
Right.
not everything is not black and white. Everything is it's not all or nothing.
Right. So that's another really good segue, actually. But now that I know you're
A natural.
such an impressive podcast guest. You should really put it at the top of your resume. Now that you're now that you're so close to your top surgery, 5 days away, as we said, coming to the end of a 2-year journey doesn't happen very frequently. You could argue coming to the end of a 4-year journey, right? Or coming to the next big stage. But what's the prevailing feeling? Like I can tell that you're excited. Is there nerves? Is there anything? Like what's that cocktail like,
Oh my god. Yeah, so it's definitely a mix of all of it. Like I kind of just go through being really, really excited some days and really, really anxious. I mean, when I first got it scheduled, like anxious. Or no, sorry. Excited. And then as time progressed, it was just kind of like a little bit anxious because it was like I started like honing in on all the little details of how am I going to get a ride? Who's going to take care of me? What is healing going to look like? What is what can happen? Like what is normal to happen? What am I going to be feeling? What am I going to be feeling right after?
Right.
Like how are my scars going to heal? Because it's such an individual thing that it's just so hard to, and it, frankly, still in this day, it's not that common. It's definitely a privilege to be able to get it even. But it's pretty much been a mix of emotions, and now I'm at the point where I just am overwhelmed with emotion, and it's like, you have all these good things happening, right? Like, say you're about to graduate college or something, and it's such an exciting thing, but you have, like, this massive amount of stress of, like, what do I do next?
Yeah.
So it's like that essentially I am so excited, but at the same time nervous for all the little details in between, and nervous for the little doubt I probably still have with my body
Right.
that it can do what I want it to do or look how maybe I'm hoping it'll look.
Right.
But it's definitely exciting, So it's pretty much a mix between the two, and it switches off day by day.
Yeah. We spoke, actually. It's kind of weird. We were speaking these last couple weeks. You've been having a couple pre-op appointments, and hearing you talk about those is really funny because the way it sounds to me. Now listen, I have not had this level of procedure at all. I've been very lucky. Knock on wood. Very lucky. So
let's do an augmentation.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. My paperwork just went through. But when speaking about those pre-op appointments, they always sound very much like, so do you want to get top surgery? And you go, yeah. And it's like, okay, that's it. And it's so interesting because it is like you say, it's not very well charted territory even now, like the actual having the dynamics in place to do it. But all this time spent, 2.5 years, and at the end of it all, and this would mess with me, at the end of it all, you get to look at a doctor and they go, so would you like to get this gender-affirming surgery you've been waiting for over years? And you get to go, yeah.
Yeah, and then they like just like sign.
Yeah, it's so interesting the way it works that way. I've always found that fascinating.
It's so funny because like that was like one of my pre-op appointments. The other one was like this woman called me and was just like, hey, remember how we went over this a year ago? Let's go over it again, just so you know.
Yeah.
And then the other one was like just like basic medication stuff. But no, that one was so funny because it's like I like to look at things like, a while ago I started looking at things like a movie just to kind of like take the edge off of things.
Yeah.
So it's like almost like you remember in Robbery, what is it?
Monty Python.
Monty Python.
Yeah, I got it.
You know when he's like they go to like that bridge and the guy's like answer me these questions, and then like he kills like one of the guys, and then he answers the question. He's like, all right, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like what it feels like, where it's like you go on like this really treacherous like journey or whatever, and then at the end of it they just go, cool.
Yeah, and it's,
you did it.
And the questions are, what's your name? What's your question? What's your favorite color?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the other person gets I think it's Galahad. He gets what's your name? What's your question? What's the airspeed velocity of a swallow?
Yeah.
I don't know. So No, it's true. It's really interesting to
It's-
come to the end of it, and it's
Oh
just
my
like
God.
the only thing
Yeah.
the only thing in your way is paperwork. It's so fascinating.
Literally. That and you just that like just made it feel so real too.
Right.
Like it's like all this emotion, this fighting with insurance, like that's another thing. I went through insurance. Some people don't even do that because it's so much easier.
Yeah.
But obviously it's an expensive thing.
Right.
But yeah, that's like the funniest part is it's like you know, what qualifies you for this surgery? Are you medically like or mentally capable of making this decision? Like, and then at the end of it, they're like, you want to do it, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
you waited 2 years and you
All
haven't
that it comes
canceled
down
it.
to.
Yeah.
What? This is a little bit of a lighter one. I wrote this down because I realized I've never actually asked you this. Like a lot of these questions we've spoken about slightly. What are things that you're excited to do after top surgery? Because I think in general, my first thought was, oh, he's taking that shirt off. I can imagine that, but it's like just in general, like what are you actually excited to do?
So that's the funniest part is that taking the shirt off is probably the least thing, like the thing I'm least excited to do because I still have other issues with my body, you know.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like it's cool in a lot of ways because from a therapy perspective, it helps me to focus on what exactly is still making me insecure.
Right.
So like just being able to look at my body and not only see my boobs will be wonderful.
Yeah.
But then like little things like it was so uncomfortable for me to just like move around. So I had mentioned this in passing, but I want to learn like just like a little bit of dancing.
Yeah.
And just like little things like outfits, right? Like I'm like I want to crop my shirts and just like things that I would say accent my body more, not
Yeah.
necessarily my chest, but my body as a whole, because I've never been able to view my body without viewing my chest.
Right.
So it's really interesting because like when I was younger, I used to make video game characters kind of like look how I wanted to look.
Right.
And like obviously I'm a kid, I don't realize that, and I would always just kind of be like it's so out of reality that it'll only ever exist in a video game.
Right.
And then one day I kind of sat back and was like, wait, fuck, I can look like that. So like just the fact that I can dress how I want, be able to wear things that accent my body more, and just like be perceived in a way I want to be perceived. And it's really hard to vocalize what I mean by that, but it's mostly just like being able to do everyday things
Yeah.
without the uncomfortableness holding me back.
Right. Right. So you spoke a little bit there, mentioning, you know, being a kid and having what you can look back at now and kind of laugh at and be like, oh, well, I mean, fucking, of course I was queer. Of course I was not
Yeah.
cis,
Oh my God,
whatever,
yeah.
right? Like, but was there a time when you first knew you were queer and moving off of that, were you like really worried about coming out? Because as long as I've known you, I actually remember, I won't tell the details of the story because it's not important, but I remember when I found out that you were, at that time, you were a woman dating a woman.
Yeah,
I remember when I found that out, I made a joke about it and you went, well, the funny thing about that is that I am gay. Like, I remember that so distinct. I remember we were in math class and I asked you that.
I was gonna say enlighten me because I don't remember
Well,
that.
I said to you, you know, if I didn't know any better, you and this person, you seem like you're dating, and you went, yeah. And then there was a really heavy silence.
I would think you're right.
Yeah, you might be onto something.
I don't, or like I do my anxious chuckle and I go, and like don't make eye contact. Like
I think that was what it was.
Yeah, probably.
So, but was there a time when you knew, and was there fear for you at all?
Oh my God, yeah. So it was kind of always like this, like it's funny, like because I can laugh about it now, but like my dirty little secret.
Yeah, right.
Like so like I knew from a really young age, and that's one of the things that they consistently asked me in all of my appointments, just to like one of like the sly ways of making sure that, and nothing against any of the doctors helping me, like that's not it at all. They do it for liability reasons, but like it's always like, when did you find out? How long have you known? Have you consistently known? Like stuff like that. So I would say from the age of 5, I always used to tell my mom, and you've probably heard this a million times, but like I always used to tell my mom that when I grew up, I wanted to be a boy named Nick with spiky hair.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that kind of like dwindled out, and I don't think I've ever told you this one, but it's so funny because I look back at it and I laugh. And I used to not understand. Like, a lot of it was just not understanding. And obviously, I have a child brain.
Yeah.
So I don't have the words to vocalize it, but I could not understand when we went swimming why I had to wear a shirt.
Right.
I could not comprehend it. And I used to beg and beg to swim without a shirt. And it got to the point where my parents would, or my dad would like take me. I remember we went on this vacation and my dad took me and we were walking down the street so I could wear my shirt off at 9 o'clock at night because I would not stop asking. And they were like, all right. And I remember that so vividly because I was like, fuck yeah. And like I did not understand at all like why, or like little things like why couldn't I cut my hair? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So I never had the words for it. And then like when I was a teenager and I kind of found a little bit more of the words for it. I mean, 2010 to 2020 was a like probably like tumultuous time, right, for the trans people, the trans community, because beginning of 2010s, I was watching like maybe 2 people on YouTube that were transitioning, and I was kind of like I enjoyed it, and I couldn't figure out like why I enjoyed it, and then like one day I was kind of like, okay, like I could be trans, like this is something that I think I would like doing.
And this is when you're like 12.
Yeah, like probably somewhere between like 12 and 14. Yeah. And so I'm like, that would be cool. And it was always like I would want to get the surgery to get rid of my chest, and it was kind of like I don't really care about the facial hair, that type of thing. I would watch it anyway because I wanted to, like, I just thought it was so interesting.
Yeah.
And then I would say about 14, I came out to somebody and I was like, hey, like, again, didn't have the words for it, and I think I said something along the lines of like, I think I like want to like transition to like be a dude someday. And they were like, again, children, I hold nothing against them for this. They were like, I think it's probably like just a phase. And I was like, okay, like I think they're probably right. So then I shut it out for like a really long time. And that's probably like how I kind of got like a little embarrassed of my queerness, which is why I was kind of like so like swept under the rug. Like when you asked me and I was just like, yeah. Like that's it. Like nothing else about it. I wouldn't like want to like flaunt it, like nothing like that. And I would never understand like why people did. But years after the fact, I was with my friend and my girlfriend at the time, and them and I were both like talking about like what it would be like to transition. And me and them were talking, and we were like I'm like, yeah, sometimes I just like want to know what it would be like to be a dude, and honestly, I don't think I'd mind being a dude. And they were like, I feel the same way about being a woman. And I was like, yeah, oh, I want to so bad. And I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, why don't you guys do it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were both just like, nah. And then like 2-3 years later, it just became like so big in my head. It was actually around like COVID time. I was like, fuck it, if we're gonna die, I may as well die happy, you know?
Yeah.
And then I was like, you know, I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it during Pride Month. And then as corny as I am.
Yeah.
And then I did.
Yeah, so hey.
And I did, and I was like, the just like relief that I felt.
Right.
And like I just remember feeling less and less stressed, and just more and more like finding myself being able to be more and more comfortable and vulnerable, and just respect myself a lot more just being called Alec.
Yeah. Do you think of, I'm not gonna like, do you think of yourself after coming out and yourself before coming out as 2 separate people?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. I was saying this to my my girlfriend the other day, and I was like, I don't view myself as a woman, and I don't view myself as a man. I just view myself as Alec.
Right.
So the person before Alec is an entirely different person.
Right.
And it's not that I like, they're not like dead or anything. Like I don't view it like an entire person, but it's like a different entity that I no longer consider myself a part of.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think? Do you think? Speaking of, do you think that? I know it's kind of like a weird thing to. Do you think that after top surgery will be another stage where it's like, oh, that was me as an out trans person before top surgery. This is me now. Like, is that another time where I'm like, oh, and now I'm this other person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I remember like the time between me being on T and now, I consider myself a different person even then.
Really?
So and it's so funny because me and my girlfriend have it like we literally say it like I'm two separate people. So there's pre-transition Alec, there's T Alec, and then there's the current Alec.
Right.
So it's like we literally talk about it like I'm three separate people.
Really?
So and it's so funny because that's like the best way I can put it because I feel like I'm growing so quickly that in changing so quickly that's the best way I can describe it, and the only way that I can think of like even describing the change that my mind and my body has gone through.
Right. So just to give more background, and you don't have to say if you don't want to, but
oh, I will.
In your history, we sort of make jokes about it. And I have you here to tell everyone that it's a joke, so it's not going to come off as
yeah. No, he's not joking. He's being serious.
Being 100% serious.
Yeah.
I have a pitchfork under the desk right now. When we joke very frequently about your journey and the fact that you've really kind of checked a lot of the boxes on your path to really discovering yourself and who you were and who you want to love and all this.
Yeah.
So just again for the record, for the record, what identities have you identified with in your life? And if you don't want to share, you don't have to.
Nearly all of
them.
Yeah. So it was so funny because I will share.
Oh.
I will share a whole lot.
Oh my goodness.
Buckle up.
Yeah, everyone take a couple steps away from the screen. Something big's about to happen.
I'm like, so I was born. No, I'm kidding. So
I was a puma, and then I turned into a small baby.
1993. My mother met my father.
I was born on the Serengeti.
So when I was in high school, I was dating a cis dude, and at that time, ironically, not a lot of people know that because when you date somebody, you just automatically become part of their personality. So it's like I was out as pansexual when I was dating my ex-boyfriend, but I was like perceived as a woman, and therefore that just kind of like swept my identity away. And then obviously I dated a girl shortly after that. So then for a short period of time, everybody was like, "You're a lesbian," and I was like, "Yeah, I am a lesbian. You guys tell me what I am." Because I don't know, and I'm gonna believe you.
Right.
So for a while, I was out as a lesbian. Then I considered myself like, from then on, like pretty much bisexual. I mean, I had a harder time. I pretty much said I had a preference for women over men. And then as I grew more into my queerness and just my transness in general, that's when I feel like I really went down the spectrum. And so I was like, for a while I was like, I'm asexual. And then I was like, maybe I'm aromantic. And like, these were things that were like going through my head that I never exactly like vocalized to the people around me. It was just kind of like me figuring my shit out. But like, I was like, I'm asexual, I'm aromantic. And then I remember I was like, I'm a trans man. And I went on T and all that, and I was like, he, him pronouns. And then... And then I found, and we were talking about this the other day, but I had found that before I came out as trans, when I was in like a woman-loving woman relationship, I would find myself being really insecure with cis men, or men in general, because it was trans men as well. And I found myself like really like resenting men, cis men, trans men, any masculine presenting person. And it took a while to figure that out. But then when I came out as trans and I started transitioning, I found myself really denying any feminine parts of myself, and therefore I ended up with this really fucking weird resentment for like lesbians or lesbian presenting relationships. And I sat there and I was like, what the hell? Like, I thought I did everything right.
Right.
Why do I still feel this way? Like,
Right.
why do I still feel uncomfortable? And then that's when I realized that that was one of my big realizations, that gender is not a binary. Because, like, people always think, like, if you're transitioning, right, you go from, like, assigned female at birth to then male, or vice versa, right? Not, like, anything in between. So I sat there and I was like, why do I feel like different on the day to day, you know? Like, why do some days I feel more masculine and some days I want to be more feminine? Why do I feel comfortable growing out my hair but then also cutting my hair? So it's like little things like that I was like, what the hell? And then that's when I kind of did more research and really felt connected to the, like, non-binary term, and just, like, the fact that gender is a spectrum in general. And I sat there and I was like, yeah, that makes more sense. And, like, I often dress more masculine, and that's one of the things that I'm actually, to go back to one of the previous questions, is really excited for, is to see how my clothing will change. Like, if I am more comfortable wearing more feminine things after top surgery, when I know I'm not going to be as likely perceived as a cis woman.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that I've noticed, really, not to speak about you and your experience and stuff, but I've noticed that
I love it.
one of the things that I really give you a lot of credit for, and I think in general people should take this advice too, not even just like young queer people, but in general, like, you're very open to, like, and all of the labels that you've identified with and identified as are all valid and equally valid at the time, because they're what you needed at that time. But I give you a lot of credit, and I really, really respect that about you, that you're like, you know, regardless if I am feeling this way in a year, in a month, in a week, this is what I'm going to be rocking with right now. This is who I am right now. And you speak to it with real certainty, and I think that there's real value in that, because I think if you were to, like, half-ass and be like, well, I'm kind of feeling like this, but I've been this other thing for really long, and I kind of feel really strongly about that, you're sort of half-assing, and you're not living a full life that way. But you have really thrown yourself in every identity, and I think that's really remarkable. But I jumping off that too, how often do you think about influencing other queer people, young queer kids? Like, do you think about your journey and, like, a lot, and being like, how am I appearing to other queer kids who might hear about me, talk about me, see me, whatever?
Almost never, ironically. Really? Yeah, that's something that I want to do, actually. That's one of my big goals, like, once I get more comfortable in life, is just to kind of, like, be able to, like, mentor or, like, help queer kids, like, queer people. I didn't want to be perceived for a very long time, which sounds ironic because, like, you can't avoid it. But
and now you're on a podcast talking about it.
Now I'm on a podcast being perceived. Capitalized.
Listen to, muted.
And it's so weird because, like, the more comfortable I get, the more I wish to be perceived in the ways that I'm trying to be perceived. But it's never something that I would acknowledge. Like, so when I was, like, more depressed, less comfortable with myself, I was like, I don't want anybody to think about me. I don't even want to exist. Right. So the more confident that I become, the more willing I am to face judgment and be more willing to share my story. So, like, I never think about, or for a while I avoided thinking about how I was perceived by others, because I think I was just, like, really uncomfortable and assumed that it was negative. That being said, my girlfriend currently is a pediatric nurse, and she was telling me that she'll get, like, trans kids that come in, and she's told me that because of my experience and because of what I've shared with her, she is able to better communicate with them. And one of the things that I loved was just one of the kids came in and is like looking to get surgery and is like X amount of time away, and she was like I'm so excited for you, like that's so exciting. And she said that the kid was like, nobody has ever said that to me, like no healthcare professional has ever said that to me, like thank you.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, that's awesome, you
Yeah.
know, because I always assumed it was the negative, you know, and I'm paraphrasing, that's not like the exact thing,
Yeah.
but like I was like, wow, like my personality and like her loving me has helped her give kids better health care. And I was like, wow. And she even told me like she's hoping to someday work in a gender-affirming clinic. And it's just so mind-blowing, but also like I'm so immensely grateful that like my experience, because at a certain point I sat there and I was like, I want to be the person that I needed when I was younger. And
Right.
that's like one of the things that has honestly gotten me this far, is just wanting to be the person that I needed when I was younger. So I guess my point is I never used to think about it. I'm only starting to think about it now. But ideally I would like to give back and be the person that I needed when I was younger.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, do you feel, it's kind of a weird question because I know you're not like in the public eye per se, but
Yeah.
do you in general feel a level of responsibility when you hear these stories, when you talk to these people? Do you feel, not like you're responsible for them, but do you feel it's important to give everyone like the full picture of like, hey, this is me, this is Alec, this is what I went through, this is me being forthright of like, this is my journey and my story, it doesn't have to be yours, so on. Do you feel like you need to give that to people?
I used to.
Yeah.
So I used to really feel like I needed to tell everybody everything.
Yeah.
Just because I was afraid that they were going to find out. Like I still had that like dirty little secret idea, you
Right.
know? And so I felt like I had to share every little thing. But starting the job that I have now, I work in the trades and I work with a lot of cis men that I just, and that's not to generalize cis men. It's just like I work with a lot of people that don't have the same experience as me and have some toxic viewpoints of it. So I never came out to any of them. I kind of like developed another personality. But that was one of my big moments where I was like, they don't need to know me. I'm here to clock in and go to work and go home, and whatever I need to do to feel safe, I need to do. I used to have to explain everything to everybody, and then I would get all of their opinions, which would kind of drag me down. And that helped me a lot, just to sit back and be like, they don't have to know me.
Right.
They can know little things about me. It's not all or nothing. They can know little things about me. They can know like my interests, what I'm looking to get out of this job, I mean, not like my actual address, but like where I live, where I grew up, like what my situation was like, right? They don't have to know every little thing.
So would you say that you value secrecy more now as an out trans person than you did before?
I would say it's not secrecy. I would say it is sharing with the right people. Because I have had, to my astonishment, a few of my coworkers who I perceived as, well, transphobic, ask me my pronouns.
Interesting.
Yeah, and to which I told them. Because I was like, wow. I mean, granted, I told them pronouns that I felt safer with.
Yeah.
But I automatically felt safer with them. So I would say I'm not holding it back, or I hope I'm not holding it back as a secret. I just more so don't want to put myself in danger. But if I feel comfortable enough, why wouldn't I want to show myself, you know?
Right.
Or express myself.
Right. It really is a sort of beautiful thing there. This is a random question too, but I did, because I know that we've sort of spoken about it. And again, if you don't want to talk about this, we don't have to. But do you feel in general that you are fetishized as a trans person, as a trans man, as a non-binary individual, whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had totally forgotten about this because you and I had been talking about that for like months straight,
Yeah.
and then I got like so preoccupied with just like my body and top surgery that I had totally freaking forgot about that. Yes, I have some experiences with it. I have a funny story that I want to share, but basically, obviously you knew me, but for people who might watch this that only know Alec, when I was in high school, I was dating a woman, and she had sent me this random Tumblr post, and it said like, it was something along the lines of like, dating a trans man is great because they have had periods and dealt with like patriarchy, so they have like so much more empathy and blah blah blah. And she was like, this is what it's like but current because I'm dating a woman. And I was sitting there, me having not come out to her, been like, yeah, dating a woman. But I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
But like, no, it was just so funny. But yes, so I feel like sometimes there's this expectation that and for me it's fine because I consider myself like more on the non-binary part of it, so I don't really care whether or not I'm perceived as like more feminine or whatever. But like, I feel like, and it's so hard because transness is such like an individual thing, but it's so difficult because I feel like there's this, and I can only speak on trans mask experiences, but I feel like there is always this expectation that like trans men or trans masked people in general are going to be more feminine, that they're going to be more in tune with your emotions, and that they're going to be like more empathetic and blah blah blah. And for me, that is true. For some people, they completely deny any feminine parts that ever existed. So I feel like there comes this expectation that you are supposed to be like more comforting, more like supportive, right? And I feel like that often comes with the idea of like what you were born with and societal expectations.
Right.
That being said, I feel like that directly leads to fetishizing. How do you say it?
Fetishization.
Fetishize.
It doesn't matter. It leads to people being fetishized.
Yes, exactly. And I feel like, yeah, there's this expectation. I don't want to say that we're better, but like there's less of a patriarchal thing going on, you know?
Right.
That we have like more understanding, so therefore it's kind of like, I don't know, just...
Do you feel that when you're, not to cut you off on your point, but
No, you're good.
do you feel when...
I'll forgive you.
Well, it's not Pride Month anymore. Do you feel... He's laughing. It's a joke. I have a gay friend.
I'm gonna post later and be like, cancel this man.
Don't listen to anything he does. Do you feel that sort of pedestal that you're put on? Do you think that that's like?
That's a really good way of wording it.
Like,
holy fuck.
When
you're so good with words.
Stop it. When people I'm blushing. When people this is about you. When people put you on this like pedestal and they paint this image of you because like, oh, well, Alec's non-binary, Alec's queer, Alec will, he'll get it, quote unquote. Whatever.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you resent that? Like, do you feel like you're being put in a box? Does that like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially because if it is something that I am insecure about, I'm insecure about something, I'm going to feel like I'm never meeting that expectation.
Right.
So like if I'm having an off day and I can't comfort somebody how they need, I feel like a massive fucking piece of shit. And it's so, yeah, and like there's this expectation too that like you understand a woman's body more or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I found that a lot of people would like my transness, and like that's not to say like maybe they don't like, I mean maybe they just like me, but like for me it came off in a lot of ways, especially on like dating apps.
Yeah.
We've talked about this where I had somebody message me because one of my captions in my my profile was like, "Together we can push the trans agenda."
Right, I remember
and
this story.
Somebody messaged me and it was like, "Up me sounds great,"
Ugh.
and multiple things wrong with that, and I was like, "Wrong way, honey."
Yeah.
First of all, secondly, like instant Like, why are you automatically thinking about
Yeah.
having sex with me?
Yeah.
Like, what about my personality?
My sparkling wit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I had somebody that I was talking to be like, I've had a trans boyfriend, and like sex with him was so great, and blah blah blah, and like I love having sex with trans people because you can like customize the strap. And I was like, first of all, who says I want to use the strap?
Yeah.
Second of all, I'm not your ex.
No.
Like, I could be terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, yeah, and it sucks too because then you go into it like, the closest I can think of is like performance anxiety.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, not that I've ever felt that, but like, that's the only thing I can think of is I'm like, why am I expected to be like so much more in tune with a woman's emotions, or like, I mean, T for T is different. Like, trans people dating each other is like more comfortable societally, blah blah blah. Like, we do understand experiences more. Not to say that I don't understand like patriarchal stuff. Like, obviously I do. That's just what I vibe with. I couldn't think of the word. But like, some people don't feel that way, so it's hard because it is such an individual thing.
Yeah.
But I do find that people have done it more, and I could never exactly figure out why, other than the fact that me being born with a vagina makes them feel safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Talking about like dating apps and stuff. Not that you're on them anymore, obviously, but did you?
I was like, my girlfriend's gonna listen.
My
to this.
girlfriend's gonna listen. She could get back.
She could get mad at
No.
me.
Alec deleted his dating apps. But did you like? What was your experience like as a trans person on those? Like, beyond the fetishization, did you feel like? Was there an extra barrier in your mind to making a real connection with that because of your identity? Did you feel extra like maybe not nervous, but did you feel as though there was this piece of you that right off the bat you had to be like, hey, so there's this thing about me and I need to glean. Are you viewing me as not what I am?
Yes.
Are you expecting something from me? Was that like something that you dealt with a lot?
Yes. So I would always tell people before we met up that I was trans,
right.
Because if you're transphobic, I want to know, like, right off the bat. Apps are great now because you can kind of like separate things. So obviously I was like a queer person looking for a queer relationship, so I wouldn't really get people that weren't queer.
Yeah.
Which is not saying that, you know, other queer people can't be transphobic, but like it's less likely, I guess.
I've never met more homophobic people than gay people, actually.
You know, that's actually not entirely wrong sometimes, because I feel like people... I couldn't tell if you were being sarcastic or not.
No, I mean, it's half a joke, but like a lot of my gay friends do make homophobic jokes.
No, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's like people end up like resenting parts of the community or themselves, so they take it out on other parts of the community. Like me with
like gay conservatives.
Well, that's not me, but
okay.
Just
I thought we were being honest, but okay.
But like, this feels like a confession.
This actually isn't getting uploaded anywhere. I'm not even recording.
Yeah, this is going to the police. But what was I saying? Yeah, I would always feel like it was safer to tell people. Not that I necessarily have to. I don't have to disclose it to anybody. But if that is going to be something that stands in the way of me finding love or sex or whatever it may be, then yes, I would rather know prior. I would feel like eventually I would have to tell people. It gets tiring because it's like I've come out so many times in my life that I'm like, why can't I just be normal? And I have this idea that like I feel like kind of like a science project or like something like that, or that there's something wrong with me that I have to like let people know. I'm like, by the way, disclaimer.
Yeah. How do you feel about that too? Like, we've spoken about that a little bit, but I want your thoughts on record. You can change. Your thoughts can change. You're a different person and all that. But what I mean is like, how do you feel about gender politics in general? Because we're very recently starting to be able to talk about like, I identify as this, that, and the other. And this isn't. I don't say this. You can't really tell because, the people listening to this aren't going to be able to see me here, like know what you and I talk about in general. I don't mean this in like a hateful way. I think it's good that we're able to talk about these things. But
oh my God,
but you as a trans person in the community, in a queer relationship, you know, all that.
Yes.
How do you feel about the, I don't know, I guess how open people are to identify every nook and cranny of their personality?
I fucking love it.
Yeah?
Yeah, so even if I can't, one of the things that I am so grateful that I always felt big emotions when I was younger, so I actually, for whatever reason unknown to me, decided to go to therapy from a young age. And I feel like that put me off to a really good start because I feel as if I am so able to understand things that, like, just because it is not how I feel does not mean that it is valid, you know?
Right.
Whatever you feel and whatever is going to make you be more comfortable, as long as it is not harming anybody else,
Yeah.
by all means, fucking do it. Who am I to tell you that whatever pronoun that maybe I haven't heard of, like, there's this whole thing called, like, neo-pronouns.
Yeah.
And, who am I to tell you? You know? If it's easy enough for me to change a fucking word that I'm saying, why the fuck wouldn't I doing that?
Yeah.
If you doing X, Y, and Z when you're having sex makes sex more enjoyable and makes your life more enjoyable, fucking power to you.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not here to sit here and say that, like, this is correct, that is correct, blah blah blah, because there are people that have been queer and hated by society that have told me what I'm doing is not correct.
Yeah.
It is so nuanced and it is progressing so quickly that to deny any other part of the community, the non-binary community as a whole is being shut out, you know? Because it's like, wow, as transness is being accepted, non-binary people are being excluded from the trans experience. So it's like, for me to sit here and say that if somebody is doing something that isn't harming anybody or blah 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 isn't correct, then that would just be hypocritical.
Do you think that we know too much about each other?
You and I?
I know you and I do. Trust me, I know more about you than I ever would have asked for.
I know, right?
But in general, do you think that we, as like a society, as a people, with social media, with dating apps, with how much we're disclosing, do you think we know too much about each other?
Probably. I mean, I guess it's an individual. It's all dependent on people's comfort, you know? Because I used to not like talking about sex, but then, like, I feel like it has become a way for me to connect with my friends and be more vulnerable and stuff like that. And from society's perspective, you know, oh, that's scary. That's not something that we talk about.
Yeah.
So, yes and no, because I do have this thing against labels.
Right.
Because I don't feel like we need to label everything, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, and this isn't something that I figured out. So this isn't me saying that I feel one way or the other, because I can actually see both sides to this. But, I am against labels because it doesn't feel like we need labels for everything, and frankly, that just leaves more room for people to judge. But at the same time, what you're feeling isn't real if you don't have the words to describe it.
Right.
So it's such a difficult thing, and I don't think we need to explain every single thing, same way that I don't need to explain every single part of my queerness to everybody.
Right.
But I don't want people feeling like what they feel isn't valid,
right,
because that is what kept me from being myself for so long.
Right.
So I don't have an answer to that exactly. I feel like that was kind of a non-answer, but that is my current opinion on it.
Yeah. I feel like, and we've spoken about this too, in terms of like sex positivity.
Yes.
And with regards to like knowing too much about each other, and we are, and I'm actually curious if you agree with this too, because I think we're on the same page with this, but I want to know. I think right, yeah. You get
Slam on the table.
You leave the room. It's like, no, I don't agree with that.
Delete this.
This is over. Do you think this is? Do you think that? I feel like our generation, you know, you're 23, turning 24 in a couple days. I'm 23. I turn 24 in a month.
Yeah.
Do you feel that we as a generation are like? I think in some ways we are more progressive than any that came before us, and yet we are also so pulled back by how strong the conservative sect of our population is.
Yes.
And I feel like it's good because we're able to have these conversations about identity, about sex, about people, about what we want. We're able to be that much more open. But I wonder sometimes, because I also think that as progressive as we are, I think that this is a generation that is very scared of sex.
Yeah.
Very scared. And not in like a scared, like, I'm going to get caught out being weird. Not
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
It's more like they're we have gone so towards being open and honest with each other about everything that I
Yeah.
think we have actually frightened each other to the point that we're like,
Yeah.
but we also don't have to know.
Yeah.
Like every action has the reaction, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, do you feel that way? Is that just me kind of spouting off about nothing?
I fucking love that question because, like, from a broad perspective, right? Think about our generation and what media has done to us. It has shown us the entire world at every single given moment.
Right.
So, therefore, what are we afraid of if not pain
Yes.
and everything like catastrophically ending?
Right.
Because that is what we have been taught our entire fucking lives is that like think about it, even like growing up in school, like we always heard about like school shootings,
Yeah.
9/11, like
Oh, yeah.
everything, the worst fucking case scenarios.
I remember the classroom I was in when Sandy Hook happened.
Yes.
I was in
Yes.
7th grade history class.
We did that walk around the school.
Yes.
Yes, and that is like, oh my god, but like we have been taught as a generation as a whole that like everything can go bad, you know, this world is full of pain, this world is full of destruction. So when you have things that, you know, we're being taught by generations that didn't grow up with social media and didn't have the chance to see every single walk of life. So we are more accepting because of the fact that we can see any or every single walk of life and every single opinion and how people feel and how people are hurt, and that makes us probably one of the most empathetic generations. But at the same time, we are so afraid because all we have been taught is death and destruction, and the world is ending and the environment is being destroyed and we can't afford shit. And not saying that that's not true, I'm saying that that ties in when your parents or whoever have been telling you your entire life that sex is a dirty thing. School has not been talking about it because we are this transitional generation.
Right.
You know, especially you and I, because we are at the beginning of Gen Z. We're like the older part of it. But don't want to age.
That's true.
But one of the things that I feel like is so important with that is the fact that our generation is so afraid of commitment because I feel like we are so afraid of pain. So what is the best thing, right? So from a woman perspective or from a patriarchal perspective, like being a victim of the patriarchy, I can say that so feminism tells you that or oftentimes telling you without telling you, is saying that like in order for you to embrace your freedom as a victim of the patriarchy, it is to have as much sex as you want, the kinkiest sex, like whatever, you know. But it's not have as much or as little sex as you want. It's always as much sex. So when you sit there and you think having as much sex is the best thing that you can do to express your liberation and express your freedom, and how much we have progressed. Oftentimes I feel like that gives people the idea, this generation as a whole, because if you are against the patriarchy, men face the same thing, right? Like, not the same thing, but you know what I mean, the patriarchy. You can't, like, it's so hard to put into words, but basically, people don't want feelings. Because feelings mean pain. So all of us are afraid to go and do the same thing that we have been told to do for generations. Because we know that causes pain, but at the same time we don't recognize that doing the opposite is also hurting people. You know what I mean? Like people are afraid, like hookup culture. People are, a lot of these ideas I've gotten from several different books. I don't want to claim them as like my own, but I feel like they are very, very important, especially for our current generation. But basically, you sit there and you want to express and you want to be a person and you want to care about yourself and you want to care about the people around you and all this and you want to have fun.
Yeah.
And our generation with social media teaches us in order to go against the grain and have fun, there can be no emotion attached and you have to do it X, Y, and Z way. And I feel as if that is what is currently going on in one of our current issues between like our generation is that we forget that feelings are still there because we have been taught for so long that having feelings is a bad thing.
Right.
And I feel like that's one of the, I mean, you look at it from a generational perspective. Like if people grow up in the Great Depression and worry about finances. Then the next generation comes along and finances are better, but they never had the ability to worry about emotions.
Right.
So we as a generation are not very in touch with emotions,
Yeah.
and therefore I feel like avoiding it as a whole.
What you bring up something really really interesting there too, where like we are right now. This is meant to be a profile about you and your feelings on queerness and that stuff in general. But you bring up something really interesting there, where it's we won't go too long onto this because this is not what this is about. But we are very much in the midst of, I would argue, one of the most catastrophically bad economic environments for young people ever.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even like,
Yeah.
I would argue it's not very close. The wage gap is worse than it's ever been. Money is less real than it's ever been. It's all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like things are more money, people aren't making as much, whatever. In addition to that, though, you bring up the Great Depression, and I remember hearing like my dad talk about my dad wasn't born in the Great Depression before anyone gets on. I remember hearing my dad talk about like his grandfather, so like my great grandfather.
Yeah.
My great grandfather, I didn't know that my grandfather, so my dad's dad. Hold on.
Yeah.
I promise I'm going somewhere. I didn't know that my dad's dad had like a sister. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Until like a couple years ago. They were he was talking about during the Great Depression, it was too expensive for my great grandfather to have 2 kids in the home. So what he did was he kept his favorite, my grandfather's sister, and he shipped my grandfather off to a boarding school so that he didn't have to feed him.
Oh my God.
Because it was too much money to do it.
Yes.
So they shipped him off. And that played with my grandfather's psyche. It affected the way that he spoke to and dealt with my father. And that, of course, trickled down to how my dad, spoke to and treated myself and my brother. Like just representation of sort of like what it is to be a dad, what it is to be a caretaker. It's harder now because now we have a lot of the lingo and the impetus, right? The energy and the desire to talk about our emotions.
Yes.
And it's so it's scary, I think, too, to bring it back around to your points. It is very scary because because the nuances are still there, but now we're all so aware of talking about it.
Yeah.
Like this in and of itself, we're going on an hour here.
Yeah.
You and I having a conversation about something that two decades ago, this apparatus to do it didn't exist the same way.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to have these conversations. 2 decades ago, it was still like illegal to be gay and married.
Yeah.
Like we are at such a crux point where technology is so advanced, our money is getting worse, and we are getting more and more able and much more loud about our emotions, and that makes it all really difficult because again, that situation with my grandfather and my great grandfather, they were never able to really talk about that. My great grandfather was not talking about his emotions in the 30s. My grandfather was interviewed for a book about being at Normandy during World War II, being a Jewish man who helped clean up a concentration camp. And not that he has to talk about his trauma to talk about his emotions, but it just that wasn't
shapes who you are.
That wasn't what you're spoken about. And then of course to trickle down, my dad's a fucking therapist,
Yeah.
right? And it's just interesting because again, everything is advanced in such a way that now we can have these conversations, and yet it is more difficult than ever to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Just when we get the ability to, it becomes so hard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I read this tweet a while ago that makes me think of this, and it said somebody was talking about their sister, and their sister said, and again, if I had the ad, I would give it, but I fucking lost that tweet a long time ago.
You're good.
But my point is, it's not mine.
Yeah.
And they said that their sister had stated, the biggest ego death is probably that you succeed as a parent if your child ends up being a better person than you. And the way that I thought of that was if your child picks up where you lack. Right? So for my family, like my parents, finances were really tough for them growing up, but they always made sure that there was food on the table, like stuff like that, like that was the thing that they didn't want me to worry about. But therefore, I am so big about emotions because that wasn't there. And back to bringing it to the queerness, like even small things like when I had gone to prom in high school, I had worn a tux. and one of my mom's coworkers or friends had messaged her and was like, I'm so proud because if I had done that when I was in school, they would have kicked the shit out of me.
Yes.
And growing up, like, still, like, my mom was really, like, scared for me. And this isn't me talking about anything, like, bad about my mom. It's just, like, she was really scared for me, so she was always like, be careful, like, who you present to and stuff like that. So, you know, and to think now, like, 5 years later or whatever, 8 years later, I'm sitting here saying it, and it's recorded, and it's going to be out there, you know what I mean, forever. Even if nobody sees it, I recorded it.
You're on file.
Out there. Yeah, I'm on file saying it.
The police have the footage.
You are going to jail.
When I'm president, this is going to be everywhere.
Yeah, because I remember I put a pride sticker on my car, and she did not mean it in a negative way, and I don't want it to be taken that way. But, like, she was like, you probably don't want that on your car. Like, I'm afraid somebody's going to, like, smash your window, or somebody's going to, like, hurt you, or something like that.
Yeah, I remember conversations when I was younger where, like...
They're like, Koby, you gay?
And those are persisting. But I remember conversations when I was younger that was like, I would say to my family, I'd be like, you know, if I was gay, would it be okay with you? Not that I was. I don't know. I think,
no, but you're like, how far does our love go?
Right, exactly. I was curious because
I get you.
The more people I met in the queer community, the more I was like...
You're like, there's a reason I'm hanging out with them.
I'm just saying.
Why do they feel so comfortable?
I'm just saying, right? Like, hey, sometimes Lego pieces fit together for a reason. But what I mean to say is, like, I would ask them because I was just curious, you know, what sort of people they were. and I'd ask them.
I wanted to know if I should run away.
Yeah. And if I was allowed to bring some friends home. But I asked, and I was like, so if I was gay, would that be okay? And I remember the reaction I got was, yeah, of course it'd be okay.
Yeah.
I'd be worried for you. And I was like, why? And they'd go, because not everyone's like that. And I don't know, it's such an obvious statement to anyone who is queer, identifies as queer, is told they're gay and isn't. Even like going back to like the 2000s dated ass term metrosexual that is still used for some reason today. Yeah. Like even that.
I don't even know what it means.
It just means a dude who cares about his appearance. That's what it means.
That's what I thought. I had a coworker one time tell me that he was a metrosexual, and I was like,
it was used for it was popularized during like the first run of Queer Eye. Where they were like,
I thought it was like drag queen, like associated.
It might be. I remember it being associated with Queer Eye. Not the point.
Same with people used to say transsexual.
Yes.
And I've had somebody say it to me.
Yes.
And they didn't mean it in a negative way, but it's an outdated term.
Right. Like it's oh yeah, like people in my life who I love dearly have said that term, and I go, I don't think you're allowed to say that. I'm gonna be honest with you. But in general, like it's not. It's like I'm not. What I mean to say is I'm not saying something that like the queer community doesn't know, but it is interesting to like to be able to express yourself more than ever, and yet it's that reaction thing that I brought up before, where it's like the reaction is always met by an equal and opposite reaction. So as far and as progressive as our generation is, you and I went to high school with people who should, let's face it, be put into a prison and beat to shit for the rest of their lives. Let's just keep it 1,000. They should die today.
Yeah.
We should go find them. I'm not going to name names. We know who I mean. Should fucking like
no, and like,
I was friends. No, don't worry about it. I was friends with like, let's be real. I was friends with like a Nazi. I'm a Jew. Yes. I was friends with a Nazi, right?
Yeah.
So like, all this to say, parentheses, these people, close parentheses. But in general, like we are so progressive, and yet we are still filled with such brain rot, and it's so interesting.
Yeah. I used to think, and like I have found myself really deeply, and I completely admit to being insecure and doing a lot of things wrong, but I used to think that offensive jokes were funny, and then I realized they were just offensive. Yeah. And
you and I had a very similar journey like that.
Yeah, and like a lot of that had to do with my insecurities about self, but like my point is there was this quote that I had read a while ago, and it was like oh my god, I forget the exact thing. But basically, to paraphrase it, like there is such thing as gallows
humor.
gallows humor, but if you're not on the gallows, you're part of the audience.
Interesting.
And
very interesting.
That changed my perspective
Yeah.
so much. Yes, you can, if you are the one being hung, by all means, joke about it. It is, and one of my teachers had said that in college, and he said the oppressed can joke about being oppressed.
Yeah.
If the oppressor jokes about the oppressed, it is oppression.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's that whole thing of punching up. Like comedians are meant to punch up, and then there's like Dave Chappelle's bald ass who's like,
yes,
well, this trans stuff doesn't make sense. It's like, you're rich. What do you give a shit?
Yeah.
You're 55 wearing a leather jacket. Put it away, Dave. What are you talking about?
In the same way that I can be confident in my body, but if somebody takes too much of an interest in my body, it becomes like
fetishization.
I can't say the word in general.
Word of the day.
Fetishization.
Yeah.
Because I had a friend say, and I'm not going to repeat the whole quote, but like he basically told me that he was watching a specific type of porn, trans porn.
Cool.
But he didn't use the right word for it.
Naturally.
Yeah, and I remember sitting there and I was like, what the fuck?
Why are you telling me this?
Why are you telling me this?
Yeah, we are a bit open with each other in general.
Yeah, and I was like, and why would you tell your trans friend that? And I was sitting there and I felt, again, just so disgusting.
Yeah.
And I was like, why am I viewed as like this science project or like this like different thing to have sex with? Like, I'm a fucking person.
Yeah.
You know? Like, and that was like a close friend of mine, and I was like, what the fuck, you know? But like, and like I pretty much just didn't want to say like the actual word that he had used.
I don't blame
you. It's just so fucking like, it's hard to vocalize, but it's like this weird viewpoint that a lot of people have, that I'm either greater than their other options in like sexuality, or that I'm less than, and there's never like you're a fucking person. Like, I so badly for a long time just wanted like mundane things to happen in a relationship. Like, I remember one of my friends was talking about how he was talking to his coworkers about him and his girlfriend like sharing a bed and how she takes all the sheets, and he was just like, just wait till you get married. And I remember sitting there and being like, God, I fucking want that. Like, whenever people ask me about relationships, it's always about like centered around my queerness. And now I'm fine with it and I enjoy it. But like, sometimes it gets to, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ, can't I just be a person?
Yeah.
You know?
You sort of you brought it up earlier, actually, when talking about how like you brought up a good point earlier. You brought up the idea of having like this idea of finally coming to this next like bend in the track, right, where like top surgery is the next big thing, and it's sort of making the appointment, you know, coming out, all these things that added an extra dimension to the plane that you're living on, right? Like, and I think tying that in really well with what you're saying, where I think that it's difficult to verbalize, again, because how do you verbalize the human experience in general? But with specifically your position, right?
Yeah.
This idea that gender is a spectrum, where it's like there's man and there's woman, and then never the twain shall meet, or whatever, right? Unless it's in an insane asylum in general, right? Just historically. But then there's that idea that it's like, oh, well, then there's, you know, people who sort of are in the middle of the spectrum, and then it's like, for some people, but meeting people who are queer and queer in vastly different ways from the other queer people I know, where like there's this line, and
there's
then
no way to pinpoint it.
Right, exactly, and then you look back and it's like, no, it's not a line. It's in a way, it's like if you want me to say it, it's like a cube, where it's like, here's where a lot of people think it rests. In reality, I'm in this quadrant of the cube today that leans a little bit more towards male, but it's also a little bit more deep than that, where actually I don't associate with all of that. And then it's like way over there the next day, where it's like, actually, you know, man, I feel like a woman. Thanks, Shania. Like that. Where it's like it's very like that. And I think what you're saying here really does elucidate that really well, where you're like, you know, today I woke up and I felt like putting on Dickies pants, some boots, and a Fruit Loop shirt and talking about my queerness. Tomorrow, I'm probably going to go to work as a plumber and not want to talk about my queerness at all out of fear
Yes.
and be this person.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think a lot of people have that, but I think you have a really interesting perspective because of the range of experiences you've had within the cube.
You
know
know,
what I mean?
like those when you said the cube thing. You know, like how when you have to pick a color and you have that color wheel.
Yeah.
But it's all like faded into
Yes.
each other.
It's a gradient.
Yes.
It's a gradient.
Yes. I couldn't think of the word.
English degree. Paid lots of money to answer my friends' questions about words.
Oh, I wanted to talk about how and we gotta end soon. We gotta end soon.
We go to an hour and 10.
Awesome.
Not long.
And
if you're still listening to this podcast, if this gets posted, thanks for listening.
no, literally, if you've made it this far, you're what kept me alive.
You're very much like what kept Alec alive, and you're also now someone who has been subject to essentially a car ride with Alec and I.
No,
This is more or less what it is.
the Tuesday, Thursday gym session that we thought we'd share.
Talking about queerness at the Planet Fitness in Danvers.
But we've talked about this so many times, but since transness is like such an individual experience, once you realize that there's no way to define transness, sexuality does not exist.
Right.
And I think that is so funny because one of our conversations, if you don't mind me sharing it,
No, please do.
is a while ago. I remember us having this conversation. I never thought it like a bad way, but we were talking about like genital preference, right? And you had mentioned something along the lines of like basically how you prefer like people who have vulvas, but like you would never date like a trans man because you don't like men. But then I'm like, you could date somebody that is masked and has never gone on T and never plans on going on T and could have all of the genital parts that you want, but pronouns are what they decided to change. Like there's no way to define it. And once you realize that is when you're just like, holy fuck, like sexuality doesn't even fucking exist. Like if you really get into it, I mean, yeah, you can, whatever labels work for you, work for you. Like we were talking about earlier, but the more you think about it and the more you give more, or come up with more ideas or things in between that like somebody could present, because intersex people exist, you know? You never know what the fuck is in somebody's pants. So it's like, the more you realize that, the more you're like, holy shit, like, does it really matter who I date?
Right. Yeah. That's yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's very much like.
I thought you were gonna be like, that's transphobic.
So that's absolutely ridiculous to said that. This whole cast is going to be deleted, and I don't personally want to see you ever again.
Yeah.
That's just me personally.
Your number blocked.
Number blocked. Tires slashed. Bank account drained. Don't ask me how. The point is, no, that's true, and I think I'm actually curious now at this question. I've been trying to think of different ways that I want to phrase it while we were having this conversation, but
Yeah.
in general, one of the things that I'm curious on is you as someone who has such a broad perspective on gender dynamics in general.
Yeah.
What do you feel represents femininity to you? Like, what does femininity mean to you?
Ooh.
Not that you are feminine, just in general.
No, I get what you mean. Ooh. It's such a hard thing because I feel like I'm still going through it in my head. But
Yeah.
basically,
It could be goods and bads,
they
just like in
can't
general.
see it, but I have a sleeve that I dedicated to femininity. Femininity.
Yeah.
And for me, femininity has always been triumph and just like strength, because a lot of it for me, which is ironic because I often view masculinity toxically as the same way, but it has been like, it has been oppressive, it has been degrading, it has been a lot of things, but for the first time in my life, ironically, after becoming more masculine, it is one of my favorite things, because I always viewed it as like traumatic, but now that I am more myself and more embracing of it, it made me realize that those are the really gentle parts of myself that I really enjoy. So I can only speak on it, obviously, on my behalf, but to me, it is soft, it is emotional, it is gentle, it is loving, it is caring, it is nurturing. Half of those things mean the same thing, but My point of it is I never, for me, for a long time, it was anger, it was trying to be strong, it was like traumatic, it was like unfulfilling. So now that I have left the parts of it that I didn't enjoy and accepted the parts that I do enjoy, it is fun and it is one of my favorite things about myself.
Right. And you probably could have been able to tell I was good. Yeah, yeah. What does masculinity mean to you? The goods, the bads. What does it mean?
Almost the same things, just in different terms, but like slightly different, I guess. To me, like it's my obviously it's what makes me comfortable, or so far most comfortable. It is like honestly the part that brought out the softest part of my femininity. Like they're so intertwined that it's hard to describe. And I feel like a lot of them kind of go along with sexist viewpoints. But it's me being like comfortable. It's me being protective, more vocal. Like I feel like to me it manifests more in how my actions have changed more than like feelings. But um, it's sweaty.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But for a while, I would look at like stereotypes and think that I had to be them like strong and like unbreakable, unemotional, stuff like that. But to me, they're so similar that it's hard to kind of like differentiate the two. But um, I would say the biggest one is probably comfort.
Yeah.
And ironically, feminine.
Interesting.
Like that is the weirdest part of it, but like um me embracing the masculinity allowed them to be almost one and the same. Because now after saying all of this, I realize that I kind of just view them the same.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. So what we are starting to wind down here, I think. But what
Yeah.
so where do you feel the intersection point between femininity and masculinity is for you then? Like you mentioned it where they're kind of the same thing, but
Yeah.
but like where would you say they meet specifically? Like what aspects of those are emotion? Okay, in what way? Yeah.
Emotion in general. Um because I feel like I have gone so far to debunk it in my head that they are just so tied together. Because in order for me to be the man that I want to be, I have to be gentle and I have to be soft. In order for me to be the woman that I might want to be, or that I have considered myself to be a part of myself,
Yeah.
is nurturing, is protective. So as I was explaining it, I was like, wait, these are the same thing to me. These are the same thing to me because in order for me to be myself, I have had to debunk the patriarchy and what it has taught me for so long that I realize I consider myself both of them.
Yeah.
And to me, they are so similar. And it is all because of emotion. Because if men were given the opportunity to be more emotional and express emotion, they could be the same exact way that I am now. And they could be the same exact way that any woman is.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Any woman could be the same. You know what I mean? So it's like emotion, I feel like, is what kind of separates us.
Yeah. So the discovery is that behind it all, we are all just
Equal.
us.
Oh.
Well, it's stupid.
No, but actually, yeah, because
Yeah.
I was sitting there and I was like, holy fuck. Like, that is how much I have separated myself from gender.
Yeah.
That I was like, I am just both. Like, my goal is to be as androgynous as possible.
Right. Do you feel more... Now, that's interesting, too. Do you feel that androgyny makes you feel more fulfilled in your not chosen identity, in the identity that you have?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, because I feel like if I swayed anyway, it's easier to kind of go back and forth. But also, it just so happens to be like what I'm kind of more comfortable with.
Right.
And also what I was given. Like, I was born a woman, but I'm fucking almost 5'10". You know, I like my hair short. I like my hair long. I like piercings, jewelry. You know, I
Yeah.
also like wearing button downs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's just a mix, and that's just kind of how I always have
Yeah.
liked presenting. But I am very curious to see how that changes after top surgery.
Do you think it will?
Yeah, I do because I already know I want to wear a dress,
Mm.
and
I didn't see you in a dress when you were identifying as a woman.
exactly.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's fucking crazy. But yeah, it's that's another thing that I'm so excited for is just to be like, even if this doesn't go anywhere, even if people don't listen to it that long, just to be able for me and you to go back and hopefully someday record it again and see how much is different.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the last question I have written down. So we've actually made it through all the ones I had on the outline.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, I wrote down a couple questions, but this went exactly the way I thought it would, which is just you and I sort of shooting the shit for the most part.
Chit chatting.
Yeah, chit chatting, being little gabby gaffies, whatever that means. That's getting deleted. Where
No, keep it, please.
were there people, and I feel like the answer is obviously yes. So it's a two-parter. But were there people that you felt like helped lead you on this journey intentionally, unintentionally, and in what ways did they influence you both without knowing and with their knowledge of it?
Yeah,
I'm sure there's a lot of people to thank. It doesn't have to be like an award show. Thanks to the Academy. No, just like in general, you know.
I've actually weirdly become very grateful for my trauma.
Weirdly,
yeah. I'm like, that's fucking weird.
Yeah.
But like, no, genuinely, if I had never been, like, forgive me for the dramatics, but like, if I had never been beat down to the point where I thought I was nothing, I would have never ever thought it was worth it to come out. So, I would thank all of the people who have been so patient for me to come out and like, or I'm grateful, I should say, for all the people who have been so patient as I came out as everything, who tried to understand it and who have actually given me a voice that can be heard. Going to therapy and having the privilege that I've had to go through insurance to get top surgery, to be able to work and be able to afford whatever payments, you know what I mean? So therapy has been a fucking huge one, but the people in my life who just kind of like supported it and educated themselves, and also the ones who didn't, because they taught me that there's a difference between acceptance and support. And sometimes in order to be who you are or whatever, you do need to hit your lowest.
Yeah.
And had I never hit my lowest with some like not great people, I would have never been able to set boundaries or even found myself or thought it was worth finding myself. Because when you hit rock bottom like mentally and you just kind of are there and you're like, it's either I can't so much or I do this one thing that I've always wanted to do, and it so fucking ends up to work out, and you're just like, shit, you know? Yeah. I was talking about that with my therapist, where I'm like, I really do wish every queer person the liberation that I felt over the past few months. But yeah, I guess my point is, had none of that trauma ever happened, I still would have bottled it up. If I kept the same friends and didn't lose them over stupid shit, I absolutely would have bottled up the stuff I had. I would have been disrespected still. I would have been, I frankly would have never learned my self-worth, is my point of this. So had I never felt so shitty that I wanted to feel better, I would not be where I am.
Yeah.
I had this conversation with my therapist today, and I just wanted to share this so that someday you or I or whoever can listen to it and think about it. But basically, we were talking about that and the three-dimensional world stuff, blah, blah, blah. And when I'm leaving my session today, she goes, best of luck. You're going to be fine. And I sat there and I was like, thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Because she's written me my letter. She has helped me. And now we're at the fucking finish line.
Now it's on you.
Yeah, now it's on me.
Yeah.
Now it's on my doctor.
That's
cut my fucking boobs off.
Yeah, and let's hope. You wake up and there's a
More
third one.
Shit.
You wake up and you're pissed, and he's like, "Oh, I thought this said augmentation."
He's like, "Holy fuck!" I mixed up the paperwork.
Alec, I don't know how to tell you this. You have no boobs and 3 legs.
I thought this was a knee surgery.
Well, Your boobs are still there, but your hip looks great. So,
Scoliosis, better.
it's straight as an arrow.
Spinal fusion, complete.
Complete. Extra 3 inches. We flew you to Turkey. I think that's probably a good place to close the book here. Is there anything you want to say in general to kind of close out before we, get to step and hit the open road?
Not that I ever think that that this would be heard by that many people or whatever, but like, genuinely, to all the fucking queer people that might listen to this, be gracious with yourself, be gentle with yourself, and if you're scared or not sure, that's normal.
No.
Do it.
Thank you so much for sitting there to do this, Alex. Thank you so much for sitting there to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Of course,
I love you.
I love you too. I really do. I love you.
I love you.
I love
really
you,
do.
and I'm glad that you and I have
Had this moment.
had this moment.
Had this hour and a half moment.
Yeah, hour and 26.
Oh.
Had this not to be specific. Had this this many years together that we have gotten to this point. If you have listened this far, if you have, I don't know, tripped down a flight of stairs and accidentally clicked on this video, whatever, or this podcast, wherever it's gonna get posted. I don't even fucking know where I'm gonna post it yet. If you found it and you listened and you spent this time with me and my friend Alec as we unpacked all of this, we appreciate you a whole bunch.
We love you.
Even if you heard this and said these two liberal fucks don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, if you decided to be transphobic after this.
Heard.
Heard. Yeah. You know what? At least you got to hear one experience and make your decision.
And you know what? Hey, you did your reading, and that's what matters,
exactly.
isn't it? Yeah.
Take care, guys. We love you.
Yeah. Say goodbye, Alec.
Bye.
Bye.